I can hear the peace within, the peace within my heart. When I'm still, I can feel the peace within, the peace within my heart. God is here in me. God is here in me. When I'm still, I can hear the voice within, the voice within my heart. When I'm still, I can hear the voice within, the voice within my heart. God is here in me. God is here in me. God is here in me. When I'm still, I can feel the love within, the love within my heart. When I'm still, I can feel the love, the love, the love within my heart. God is here in me. God is here in me. God is here in me. God is here in me.
Thank you. Come on, take a breath in. Breathe it in. I want to invite you to get in the waters this morning. Get in the waters of spirit. God is here. God is here. In fact, rest your hand on your chest, on your heart. Rea, can you sing just a little bit more? God is here. That should be our mantra this morning. This is the only prayer we need to pray. Grace is here. Healing is here. Love is here. Peace is here. Joy is here. Unity, it's here. Breathe it in, friends. You don't have to go anywhere. It's right here. It's right here for us today. Dip in the waters. Feel yourself full of it this morning. Let's sing it together. God is here. God is here in me. God is here. Come on. God is here. Feel the vibrations raising in this place. Love is here. God is here in me. Peace is here. Come on. Peace is here. Healing is here. I feel it. Come on. Healing is here. God is here. God is here. And so it is. Que akua manae. Muchas gracias, Señor. What now? Take a deep breath in. Can you feel that? If you couldn't feel that, come and talk to me after service. That's what we come for. Those are the moments that I long for. To feel the presence. To feel the presence that transcends the intellectual understanding and intellectual rendezvous with the divine, but to feel his presence. And there is nothing else that compares to that. Nothing. Nothing compares to the presence, friends. There's no joy that can compare to feeling that presence, that sweet presence of knowing that the creator of this universe is right where we are. Not only on our side, but on our inside. How about that? Somebody ought to shout, "Thank you, God, in me." You know, we were to talk about a two-word subject this morning that comes in the form of a question. Two simple words, but when we put them together and add a particular punctuation at the end, it evokes and invokes a powerful response in the soul. The two words this morning that comes as our subject is simply, now what? Let's affirm it together. Now what? Once again, now what? I invite you to call yourself by name so we make this time personal so that you understand that I'm not talking about anybody else but me. And then this message becomes just for you. Call yourself by name. Jack? Now what? Have you asked that question lately? Have you been faced with that question lately? Have you even heard that question lately? As you consider many of the shifts that may have occurred in our lives individually and collectively over the past week or past few weeks. In fact, I'm aware that there are those who have retired recently and they're now asking this question, now what? All new retirees, raise your hand, please, so that I know that I have some witnesses in here this morning. Congratulations on your new retiring, your new appointment. So now what? After 30, 40, 50 years of service, getting up every morning, of getting ready, and getting dressed, and going to that place that was so familiar, now what? Maybe there's been a shift in your family dynamics, and loved one is no longer in the physical realm, and you're asking, now what? Maybe there's been a shift in the relationship, a shift on the... Anybody shifting in here? Maybe there's been a shift in your career, and maybe the joy, or maybe what you thought was going to be your lot, it's just not it. And now you're asking the question, now what? What? Now what? And maybe you don't like now what? Ask what now? And as we consider this question, it reminds me of the man who was looking for a job, and he noticed that there was an opening at the local zoo. He inquired about the job and discovered that the zoo had a very unusual position that they wanted to feel. In fact, apparently their gorilla had died, and until they replaced it, they just needed someone to dress up in the gorilla suit and play, act like the gorilla, because there were a lot of patrons coming in looking to see the gorilla. So the man saw the suit, and sure enough, he tried it on. It was a perfect fit, and he thought, well, the pay is rather good, so it's not going to hurt. I can do this for a few days. And they said, well, all you got to do is dress up, go sit over in the corner of your cage, and occasionally get up, walk about. The man put on the suit. It was a perfect fit. He went in his cage. He took a seat. After a while, he got fed up. He got tired of sitting, so he started walking around, and people started coming around, and he decided to make a few gorilla noise, sounds. And so as he made his sounds and he walked around, the people got excited and they started clapping and cheering. And the more sounds he made and the more he hopped around, the more they applauded. They cheered him on and they started throwing peanuts, and he really liked peanuts. And so he says, wow, this is pretty exciting. And so he saw this vine and decided to jump up and grab hold of the vine and started swinging from one side of the cage to the other. And the people just cheered, yay, that's a great gorilla. And the man got full of himself. And the more they cheered, the higher he went on that vine. And he swung from one side to the other. And they cheered him on, yay, that's a great, and he got even higher. He kept going, and he swung from one side of the cage to the other, and they cheered him some more, and he was so happy, and he went to swing again on that vine, and all of a sudden the vine collapsed, and he fell in the cage next to the cage that he started in. And when he looked up, there was this big lion less than 20 feet away. And the man thought, uh-oh, now what? And the lion began to make its way over to this man. And the man started yelling, oh, no, I'm not really a gorilla. I'm a man in a gorilla suit. And the lion pounced on the man and says, man, will you please shut up before you get both of us fired? Oh, y'all. Now what is a question, friends, that we're often called to ask. In fact, life has those moments. Some of us might be living at now what station. We might be in now what city, at now what street, avenue. Maybe now what is our address. Life has a way of causing us and calling us to consider that question. Life is often full of ambiguity, wouldn't you agree? The unknown of what next, what now, where now, what now? And as we consider this question, it's a simple question. It's not a rhetorical question. It does require a response of the soul. This question reminds me of the same question that the disciples were asking right after Easter Sunday, after the resurrection. It says they were asking this question, now what? And we understand here in Unity that when we read anything from biblical literature, or the Bible, or biblical narratives, that the Bible is not, it's more than a historical or theological book. Yes, there's history and theology and literary narratives in the Bible, but the Bible is so much more than that. The Bible is a book of consciousness unfolding. The Bible is a book of spiritual psychology. From Genesis to Revelations, from the beginning to the ending and every place in between, the Bible is a book not only of consciousness, about consciousness, but the Bible is a book about my consciousness and your consciousness. And when we understand it, and the more we understand it, and we take it out of its historical literary context, and we put ourselves in it and find it within ourselves, then it transcends history. It truly becomes the mystery that Paul says, I tell you a secret, I tell you a mystery that's been hidden for ages and for generations. In this mystery, I'll give you the nugget of truth that will set your soul free and that will lead you always to the answers to that question of now what. The disciples were considering this question, now what? Our rabbi is gone, now what? Who's going to pay our bills? Who's going to take care of IRS? The master teacher was able to tell them to go down and catch a fish and look in the mouth of a fish and get the money. The money is in the mouth of the fish to go pay your bills. The master teacher was there. Who's going to now heal the sick? Who's going to make the sick well? Who's going to set the captives free? What now? What are we going to do? How are we going to make it now? What now? Now what? They were considering this question. And it says, in the midst of questioning, questions really are good. I think that there are some good questions that we can ask, and there are some not so good questions. Like my mother used to admonish us about this every Sunday morning. Now, every Sunday morning we had our routine. We would get dressed, go to Sunday school, and go to church. And I had a particular sibling would ask every Sunday, well, what time is church? Every Sunday, the same time now. It hasn't never changed. It was the same time. What time does church begin? She says, do not ask me those silly questions anymore. You already know the answer to that question. But questions that will lead to a greater realization and revelation, she would applaud. The now what question was where the people were living. They were asking this question. They were asking for greater clarity. They needed spiritual insight. They needed spiritual guidance. And it says that on that road to Emmaus, they were having this conversation. The disciples, remember, the disciples are not historical figures. The disciples are the 12 attributes of our soul. Let's say this. The disciples represent the 12 attributes, the 12 functions, the 12 disciplines of my soul. So they were having this conversation. Well, what are we going to do? What now? And it says, as they were downcasted and downtrodden, and they were looking down in consciousness. And you can never solve the problem at the level of the problem. You know that, right? In order to get the answer, we might have to rise above the seeming challenge or condition. And it says, as they were asking the question, their answer appeared. It says, there in the midst of them, this was the second time that Jesus had appeared since the resurrection. It says there were 6 times over a period of 40 days that the Master appeared to his disciples, to his followers. And when we understand, let's understand Jesus in its right in the context in which I speak. When I speak of Jesus, when I sing about Jesus, I'm not talking about the theological historical figure as much as I'm talking about the God-conscious mind in man. The God-conscious mind in you, the God-conscious mind in me. The God-conscious mind is the mind that is conscious of Keakua. The mind that is conscious of divine mind. The mind that is conscious of the great architect of this universe. The mind that is conscious. Give me another word for conscious. Aware. It is the mind that is aware of the presence and power that undergirds the universe. So when I speak of Jesus, I'm speaking of the God-conscious mind in me and the God-conscious mind in you. It's the mastermind. And those who've been in my mastermind class, and those of you who are in the mastermind class, know that the mastermind is the divine mind, and we can tap into the mastermind, and the mastermind will appear. It says that in that moment, they were asking the question, and the mastermind appeared, but they knew him not. They didn't recognize him. And in their questioning, he began to talk to them, and they still did not know him. The master teacher says, my sheep knows my voice. That's why listening is, it says reading is fundamental, but listening is fundamental as well. In our listening, we learn to discern the voice of spirit. I believe it was Paulo Coelho who writes in his book, The Alchemist. It's a wonderful story. If you haven't read it, read it. It's a wonderful story of discerning, of listening to how the universe, of how the divine, of how Keakua speaks to us, and learning to discern that and to follow. It says that they heard the voice, but they didn't recognize it. And the master teacher had already said that my sheep knows my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. They were asking the question. The mastermind appeared and began to talk to them. They still didn't recognize him. It says in that moment, towards the end, they realized that it was he. Friends, as we consider this now what question, now what? We're called to be mindful of where we turn to for the answer, of the source. Now, how many of you ever called your friends or family the moment that you were going through some things and you needed them to give you a higher revelation, and they came with the same low vibrational energy, the same low stuff? Come on, be honest, tell the truth and stay in church. And maybe you were the one who answered the phone when they called. The same stuff. But when you call, in that reaching out, the soul reaches out. The psalmist says that as the deer panteth for the waters, the soul longs for that moment that we had right after meditation, right as Rea was singing. The soul longs for communion, common union, oneness. The soul longs for it. And as we consider this month's disciple, James, son of Zebedee, James is who represents wisdom and good judgment that leads us to discerning the voice of spirit. And if you put your hand right here on your solar plexus area, Gary Zukov calls it the seat of the soul. This is where your James, son of Zebedee disciple is located, right here. Good judgment and wisdom. Good judgment is not judgment, it's judgment based on truth, not on facts. You see, facts will change. Facts will change. Listen, it can be cold at night, that could be a fact, and warm in the morning, hot at noonday. The temperature can change. Facts will change just like the weather. But truth remains the same. James, son of Zebedee, is the discerning, the wisdom, the good judgment faculty of the soul that tells us and guides us as we spiritualize James. Now, how many of you ever had James to speak to you and you didn't listen to him? Oh, and what an era that was, wasn't it? There was a young fella at the 9:30 service when I asked the question, how many of you have had James to speak? This young fella raised his hand. And you know, I applauded him because it was at that early age that James started talking to me. And I learned to listen to James. And then as I became more educated, I got my degrees, I thought that I knew more than James. See, this is the first mind. It's rooted in the first mind. The conscious mind that has all of the knowledge, the stuff that we feed it, we give it all of the right books and we write all of the papers and we read all of the right stuff. It feeds the conscious mind, and the conscious mind is the trickster of the soul. It will trick you if you're not aware. And as I began to listen to my head instead of, really, this is the heart. The heart has been located here. To the soul. You see, as Joseph Murphy says it, that right here, the seat of the soul is the subjective phase of our being. It's the subconscious mind. And in the subconscious mind, we have all of the nutrients, all of the properties of the supreme mind, the God mind. And if we listen to it, it will speak to us. And if you ever have that question of now what, get still. Get still. Get in the moment of stillness. I was taught this years ago when I first started in Unity. Get in your room if you have to. I don't care if you have a one closet room. I don't care if that's as large as your space is. Get in it. Turn out the lights. Get quiet. Shut off all of your cell phones, all of your electrical devices, and listen for Spirit to speak. Reverend Constance Mulhorn Taylor says, I can hear the Spirit's voice as I listen. It helps me to make the perfect choice as I listen. No more running to and fro. All you got to do is be still and take it slow. It will tell you all that you need to know. When you don't have to call 1-800-1900, nobody. Get on the line and call the Jesus, a God-conscious mind inside of you. And I promise you that line is never busy. But you got to get on it. Get on the horn and call on it. Before you run calling your doctors, your friends, your family, call the line. Get on the main line. We used to have this song, Jesus is on the main line. Call him up and tell him what you want. The line is never busy. You got to learn how to, and if you do, you know God's number. If you don't know God's number, I don't care how much you dial it, you'll never get an answer. But you got to know God's number. And if you don't know God's number, you might need to come to the next service that I preach and get the number. So when you dial the number, you'll get a response. That number, anytime you call it, morning, noon, or night. David called it. He says he was in the valley of the shadow of death, and he called the number, and he got a response. And the response is, yea, though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, fear no evil, for I am with you. My rod and my staff, they will comfort you. I will prepare a table before you in the presence of those who don't understand you. I will anoint your head with oil, with wisdom, with information, with inspiration that the world cannot comprehend. You got to know who to call. Don't call Sally. Sally don't know. Don't call Sue. Sue don't know. Don't call Leroy, James, John, none of them. Call Jesus on the inside of you. The God-conscious mind in me. And then you simply let it be. God bless you.